Hello everyone and welcome back for some more Drag Race gossip, secrets and drama. So I'm back for another Roscoe's recap, and this viewing party was for season 15 episode 10, and the guests were Malaysia Babydoll Foxx from season 15, Kornbread from season 14, and Kennedy Davenport from season 7 and All Stars 3. If you want to check out the full viewing party, I'll put a link in the description. Today we're going to be talking about what the producers said to Malaysia to make it clear that she was going home that episode, the tea on whether Kornbread would return to Drag Race, and the unaired moment from Untucked that may have affected the outcome of this week's episode. All that and more coming up in today's video, so let's get started. Please note that because we're going to be talking about the outcome of certain episodes of Drag Race, there is a spoiler alert in place for this video. So they first of all started by the hosts asking the guests if they've been enjoying the season so far, and Kennedy said that she had binge watched season 15 because she's not at home very often. And Kennedy then said that season 15 girls were, quote, keeping the legacy alive or whatever, and everyone in the audience laughed and implied as though Kennedy was being shady. And then Kennedy said, quote, it seems like it gets worse every season, and the audience laughed. Kennedy then questioned some of the casting decisions and said, quote, damn, they picked that one. And Kennedy also said that every season, quote, it brings down our property value. But Kennedy said that she respects everyone and all drag is valid. They then talked about the beginning of this week's episode when the girls came back into the workroom after Spice's elimination, and host Naysha Lopez said that, quote, Loosey is being Loosey. And Kennedy said, quote, I see we have a milk on every season. And then Kornbread said, quote, that's so rude, her name is Diabetes. Naysha then asked Malaysia whether Loosey was really that delusional in person or if it was just the editing. And Malaysia said that she didn't really remember because she didn't interact with Loosey that much during the competition until they worked together in a group. But Malaysia said that Loosey, quote, gave them the material and they used what they get, implying as though Loosey was giving the producers the type of delusional behaviour that they could use in the edit. Host Batty Davis then brought up the heated moment in Untucked from a few episodes ago between Malaysia and Marcia. And Malaysia said that after she had had that moment with Marcia, it was quiet for a very long time and Marcia was, quote, tearing up on the sofa, but they edited that out. And apparently Mistress Isabel Brooks also reiterated what Malaysia had said to Marcia, but that was also cut out. They moved on to this week's challenge, which was the improv challenge where the queens split into 3 groups and had to interview 3 different celebrities. And the first group was Luxx, Mistress and Selena, and Naysha asked the guests who they thought excelled in this group, and Kennedy said, quote, the one who don't got no drag did really good. And the audience laughed and the hosts asked Kennedy who she was referring to, and it appears that Kennedy was referring to Luxx Noir London. And Kennedy added, quote, I think she has a beautiful personality and she knows how to do the competition, she just don't have no clothes. And Kennedy then went on to say that some of the queens on the season just aren't very memorable, but she didn't give any more specifics. They then moved on and talked about Malaysia's performance in the challenge, and they brought up the comment that Mistress had made when she said, quote, I don't know what's worse, the conversation and dialogue or Malaysia's synthetic bob. And Malaysia brought up that moment and then said, quote, first and foremost, that was not my synthetic bob, that was Luxx's synthetic bob, and everyone in the audience laughed. And Malaysia said that Luxx had actually worn that bob during the Afterlife challenge. Naysha then asked Malaysia if anything was cut out of her interview with Frankie Grande, and Malaysia said yes and explained that she thought that she did a good job, and then implied as though they had edited out a lot of her jokes to make her look worse. And later in the viewing party, Malaysia said that they had got given a lot of background information about each of the celebrities so that the contestants could prepare what to ask them, and apparently the information said that Frankie was a vegan. However, just before they went to film the interview, the producers apparently told Malaysia that Frankie was actually not a vegan and that they would be making a sausage pizza. So Malaysia said that she had prepared a lot of questions about being vegan, but then couldn't use any of it because she only got told at the last minute. And then Kennedy told Malaysia not to worry about her performance and said, quote, "No worries, Marcia was just as bad." And the audience started laughing, and then Kennedy said, quote, "What, I'm just saying, am I not supposed to say that? The B was bad." They then moved on to the runway for that week, which was a night of 1,000 Beyoncés. And when referring to Marcia's runway, Kennedy said, quote, "Marcia looks like a bag of carpets." And everyone gasped and laughed in the audience, and Kennedy explained and said, quote, "Like they put them in a trash bag and you pull them out and say, 'Oh look B, I got some carpets, you want to buy one?'" And then Kennedy added, quote, "Oh, you know I didn't mean it, girl," and laughed. So I think this was just a joke and wasn't meant too seriously. They then got to the part of the episode where Malaysia got eliminated and everyone clapped for Malaysia. And Naysha asked Malaysia if there was anything she wished she had said to the judges during the critiques. Malaysia said no and explained that she knew, quote, that it was my day, implying that she knew that she was going home that episode. And Malaysia said that at the beginning of the episode, normally the queen who is going home that week usually has a moment in the workroom where they talk about something traumatic. But Malaysia said that she was just smiling the whole episode and didn't want to be defeated. But apparently the producers came over to Malaysia in the workroom and pulled her aside and said, quote, "Whatever you're feeling today, just go in there and feel it." And Malaysia said that after that, she turned to all the other girls and said, quote, "Today's the day," implying as though she knew that today was the day she was going to be eliminated, and production had basically confirmed that because they were trying to get her to say something traumatic in the workroom. They then talked more generally about Malaysia's run on the show, and Kornbread then said, quote, "I'd like to have a conversation with you all and be real human beings about it." And Kornbread then said, quote, "I'm going to say something that's very taboo because the internet falls into a world of, oh, we've got to put this person on a pedestal." And Kornbread then went on to say that she's going to say what most people are afraid to say. But Kornbread said, in her opinion, Lux should have won that challenge and Malaysia should have won the lip sync. Kornbread also said that she is good friends with Sasha, who did win the challenge, and she's also friends with Selena, who was in the bottom two along with Malaysia. But Kornbread said that although Sasha is amazing, she thinks that Lux should have won and Malaysia should have won the lip sync. And Kennedy then said, quote, "But can we also say how Marcia should have been in the bottom?" And everyone started laughing, presumably because Kennedy had made a few other jokey comments throughout the viewing party about Marcia, so it was clear that Kennedy thought that Marcia should have been in the bottom. And then Kornbread agreed with Kennedy and said, quote, "We can say that, but I genuinely forgot that Marcia was in the episode." They then talked in general about Drag Race not being very fair in the decisions they make, but they said that it's a TV show first and a competition second. And Malaysia said that although she loves Sasha, apparently Sasha was really nervous that she was going to be in the bottom that week, and the whole cast was apparently gagged by the judges' decisions throughout the show, and the cast often didn't agree with the placements and didn't think they were fair. Naysha then talked about the editing and said that she agreed with Kornbread that Sasha should not have won this week. And Naysha also said that Loosey was phenomenal in this week's challenge, but Naysha said that the producers know that it bothers Loosey when she doesn't get the win, and so they probably deliberately didn't give Loosey the win just to see her reaction. And Kornbread then said, quote, "We have to get past this moment. Zero disrespect to anybody. I'm obsessed with Sasha. She's effing phenomenal. But I feel like the fans now go to a moment of not wanting to speak the truth because they're afraid of what everyone is going to say against it." They then moved on and Naysha asked Malaysia what her relationship is like with the rest of the cast, and Malaysia said that she gets on with everyone and talks to everyone in the cast, and then she paused and said that there was maybe one person that she didn't speak to, and then she laughed. Then Naysha asked her who it was that she didn't speak to, and Malaysia said, quote, "I don't know, who do you think it is?" And people in the audience shouted out Marcia, and Malaysia then said, quote, "I don't know, you want to see the text thread?" and then laughed, but she didn't confirm who it actually was. They then got onto the topic of having social media queens on the season, such as Sugar and Spice, or more seasoned queens and performers like Sasha and Mistress. And Kennedy talked about Drag Race casting social media queens to try and get those people's audience interested in Drag Race, and Kennedy said, quote, "They're trying too hard when they don't have to. Production is trying too hard to reach a certain demographic that they've already reached, and instead of letting the show work itself, they're trying to work the show." Kornbread then said that the show should have the cast made up half of, quote, old school drag performers, and then the other half should be social media queens, and that mix of queens would make a good season. And Kennedy made the point that the earlier seasons of Drag Race used to be that way, which is why the memorable moments from Drag Race tend to be in the seasons up to around season 8. And Malaysia said that the queens tend to be typecast when they get cast on the show, and then when the queens come who the producers think will bring the drama, the queens don't actually end up bringing the drama because they're afraid of the hate and criticism that they'll receive from the fans. And Malaysia also said that some of the queens say shady things in the confessionals, but not to people's faces, and the fans think that that's okay, but then if someone says something to someone's face that's shady, they get a lot of hate about it. And Kornbread said that if you ask anyone who are the most memorable queens from Drag Race, it's probably not going to make it into the double-digit seasons because the earlier season queens were less afraid to speak their mind and it was more entertaining. They then moved on to the audience Q&A, and someone asked Kennedy if she would ever compete in a Versus the World season. And Kennedy said, quote, "True story, they called me for Canada versus the World, but I was in the UK." But Kennedy said that she would go back again if she got another offer. Someone then asked Kornbread if she would ever go back for an All-Stars, and Kornbread said that she would rather go back for another regular season because she was never eliminated on her original season, so it wouldn't make sense to do an All-Stars. And Kennedy then said that she had heard Kornbread had turned down an offer to go on All-Stars, and Kornbread smiled and said, quote, "I ain't gonna repeat that." And it was implied as though Kornbread had previously been offered something, but turned it down, but this wasn't confirmed. But Kornbread said ultimately she would go back to Drag Race. And just as a side note, in a recent interview with Joseph Shepherd, Kornbread said that she wasn't contacted for season 15, which is originally why she tweeted saying that she wouldn't do All Stars. But it appears as though what Kornbread was saying at Roscoe's is that she would go back, so potentially Kornbread has changed her mind, or potentially what she originally said was misconstrued. We'll have to wait and see. They were then asked what it's like preparing for the show and if there were any memories from that time. And Kornbread said that when she was getting her outfits ready, she got a bunch of her friends to reach out to designers on her behalf and say that they were cast on Drag Race. And this is because apparently designers sometimes snitch on people and reveal who the contestants are that are going on, which is why Kornbread got her friends to lie and say that they were going on instead of Kornbread. They then got on to Untucked for that week's episode, and they talked about the moment when T.S. Madison came in and had a heart-to-heart moment with Sasha, and someone said that it might have been a bit unfair to the other contestants because it felt a little biased towards Sasha. But someone said that T.S. Madison knows a lot of the contestants from before because she's really into the pageant scene. And Kornbread brought up the fact that Selena S. Titties is really good friends with Frankie and Ariana Grande outside of the show, and that's probably why Selena wasn't assigned to the group with Frankie because she would have had an unfair advantage. And finally, Malaysia talked about the moment in Untucked where both she and Mistress thought that they were going to be in the bottom, and Malaysia joked and said, quote, "Gosh, I might get in trouble, but I don't give an F." And Malaysia explained that she and Mistress had been talking in Untucked, and Mistress said that because she was in a gown, she wouldn't be able to do much in the lip sync. And apparently Mistress, quote, had a fit that was edited out, and apparently Mistress said that she was just going to stand there in one spot, and then said to Malaysia that she would have to dance circles around her. And Malaysia said that perhaps the producers had heard what Mistress had said, and so instead they put Selena in the bottom because they didn't want Mistress to go home because they like her, implying as though that's why Selena was in the bottom too instead of Mistress, because the producers didn't want to risk Mistress going home. So there you go, there was the Roscoe's recap for RuPaul's Drag Race Season 15 Episode 10. Which part of the viewing party surprised you the most? And who do you predict will win Season 15? Let me know in the comments. Please make sure you like, comment and share this video as it really helps support my channel. And of course, please make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date about new uploads. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll join me again in future videos. Thank you, bye!